Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa khususan ala afdalihim bikhatamin nabiyyin Muhammadin al-amin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Our respected chairman, Luqman Watanabe, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is a pleasure for me to address the subject from the Grand Taj restaurant here in One City Mall in Kuala Lumpur. And although our gathering is small, the subject is such, we pray that the talk may reach many more in so many parts of the world. The topic, of course, is Iqbal, and by Iqbal we mean, of course, Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. There is no disrespect intended in using the name Iqbal. Pakistan, a country in which I studied. I got my education in Pakistan. I lived in Pakistan for 12 years, but apologies for my Urdu. Iqbal, Pakistan, and the Khilafah state. And we want to begin by changing the topic around a bit to begin with the Khilafah state. What is the Khilafah state? The definition of a Khilafah state. The functions of a Khilafah state. And what is the methodology which should be adopted to explain that subject. And then we proceed to Iqbal. And what were his views concerning the Khilafah state? And we look at him in Urdu, in his poetry. And then we look at him in his English, in his books, in his lectures, his statements. And then finally, we look at Pakistan. And we ask the question, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the three words there. What is a republic? What are the implications of Pakistan describing itself as a republic? And what are the implications of the use of the word Islamic? And we conclude, and we hope that there'll be no differences of opinion on this subject, because the Quran is absolute truth, that by the term Islamic you mean a Khilafah state. So Pakistan has the unique distinction of claiming to be both a republic and a Khilafah state. Is it possible? Is it possible for you to be both Islamic meaning a Khilafah state, Islamic meaning a Khilafah state? I don't have to repeat that 1,000 times. Our people are intelligent. To be both a Khilafah state and a republic. And then finally, we come to determine, does the Khilafah state exist anywhere in the world today? And if not, can it be restored? And if so, when can it be restored? And how can it be restored? And in doing so, we'll be turning again and again both to the Quran and to he who was sent to teach the Quran, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. There have been many distinguished scholars who have written and lectured on the subject of the Khilafah. We mean no disrespect to anyone if we do not quote any names of any books or so. And we go directly to the source of knowledge, the Quran, and to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This is not disregarding or disrespect for Islamic scholarship of the past. With that qualifying statement, let us now begin with Allah's blessed name. Proper methodology is that we must always turn to the Quran when pursuing knowledge of any subject at all. That we must recognize the Quran to be absolute truth, irrefutable truth, unchanging truth, truth which cannot be challenged, unchallengeable truth. The secularized mind is repugnant to the secularized mind. There should be any such thing as absolute truth. So it is uncomfortable for a secularly educated scholar to listen to a lecture like this. And we suggest to such people, if you're uncomfortable with our approach, then you don't have to listen to us. No. When we go to the Quran, we must not take any single verse in isolation to come to conclusions, but study the whole book. I have a book here, which my last book that I've just published, on methodology for the study of the Quran, and it teaches you what is the method of studying the Quran. My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahimahullah, was himself a student of Iqbal, and perhaps one of the best students of Iqbal. And it is he who taught methodology. He did so in his book, the 2-volume book entitled The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society. I saw a copy right here. The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society in 2 volumes. Thank you. By Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari. It is from there we got methodology, how to study the Quran. He says you must go to the totality of the book, the whole book. You've got homework to do. And when you found all the data in the Quran pertaining to the subject of Khilafah, you must combine them, bind them together as a harmonious whole. And that's not a job for a schoolboy. No. Serious scholarship is required. When you've done that with the Quran, only then do you turn to the Hadith. If the Prophet ﷺ is alive and with us, we use a different methodology. But if he's not here anymore, then we turn only now to the Hadith. And when we do so, when a Hadith is in harmony with the Quran, we accept it. We expand our database. If a Hadith is in conflict with the Quran, like, you know, the famous or the infamous one, that our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, married a child. He married a child. I mean, even ordinary common sense tells you something is wrong with that. So when you find a hadith which is in conflict with the Quran, you reject it. But if a hadith is neither in conflict nor in harmony with the Quran, we can accept it. But it has a lower status. You don't establish a sectarian movement on the basis of such statements. Now, when you're done with the Quran and the hadith, then you turn to data located in the historical process. And you use this as your basic instrument for analyzing such data. That's proper methodology. Proper methodology also, I was taught from my own teacher, is that you never accept anything as truth, which is not in the Quran and Hadith. You never accept anything as truth that Imran, for example, might say to you, until you're yourself convinced that it is correct. And so I often would say to my teacher, Maulana, I don't agree with you. And he would smile, because he knows. A few months later Imran will come and say, Maulana, now I agree with you. And there is no disrespect whatsoever in a student differing with his teacher. There is no disrespect whatsoever in a student saying about his teacher, you committed an error. Otherwise, a teacher can make a mistake and it will be compounded for generations to come by those who don't have a critical faculty to think and simply absorb knowledge uncritically and repeat the error. So if we offer a critical comment on Iqbal, we do not mean any disrespect whatsoever. And it will be very ungracious of critics to come at us with a dagger in their hands simply because we offer a critical comment on a great scholar. What is the Khilafah state? How important is it? In order to understand the Khilafah state, we've got to go to Awwalul Zaman, the beginning of history. At the very beginning of history, we find it on the first page. And it is located at the top of the first page of history. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to the angels and said, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. See what happens when you take the Quran to understand the subject? I'm going to place on earth one whose function will be to be Khalifa. Whatever it is, this function of being Khalifa on earth is something that is very worrisome to the angels, because Allah has already conferred upon them knowledge concerning the subject. They know what's going to happen in the historical process with this matter of Khalifa. So they responded and they said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you going to place on earth those who have the function of establishing Khilafah, and who in doing so are going to commit great fasad, corruption and destruction of the world, and shed blood? Where is the bloodshed today? Where is the fasad in the historical process? Please remind me if I forget to tell you where it is in history. So this is the opening statement in the Quran, that you are here on earth, mankind, your basic purpose, your basic mission for which you are sent on earth is connected with Khalifa. So what is Khilafah? It is the Quran which was now expand. It is the Quran which was now explained. And in now taking you to the explanation of the Khilafah, we are only touching the top of the mountain. It is for you to do your homework and go to all the rest of the Quran pertaining to this. But we take the most important part of it, the trunk of the tree itself. The rest is easy for you to study in the Quran. What is Khalifa that Allah says He's placing on earth? Who is Khalifa? What is his function? We leave Surah Al-Baqarah and we now go to Surah Al-Sad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses a prophet. His name is Dawood alayhi salam. And this is what he says to him. Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. O Dawood, O David, we are establishing you on earth as Khalifa. Okay. Well, what are the implications? What are the functions? Here's the answer. فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِالْحَقِّ. Don't forget these words, because we remember them in the grave. We remember them in the grave. Ya Dawood, we are placing you on earth, establishing you on earth as Khalifa, so that you might govern, so that you might rule, so that you might establish law on the basis of al-haq. So Khilafah is a state. Khilafah is a state in a territory in which there is governance. That's Khilafah. And in that state, governance is based on al-haq. Khilafah is a state in which there is rule over the people. The rule is based on truth. Khilafah is a state in which law is established, and the law is based on al-haq. From where does al-haq come? Is it from Punjab University or Quaid-e-Azam University? From where does al-haq come? Is it from CNN or Al Jazeera? Or does it come from Washington? Al-haq comes from Allah, whether they like it or whether they don't. It is difficult for the secularized mind to accept something like this. The truth comes from Allah. The truth is absolute. It doesn't change with every passing cloud. The truth is universal. It's not what's good for me is truth for me, and what's good for you is truth for you. A secularized version of truth. That all values come from absolute truth, and therefore all values are unchanging and universal. This is poison for the graduate of the modern university. Therefore, a Khilafah state is a state in which rule or law or governance is based on truth, which has come from Allah. Full stop. Full stop. If you don't know the truth which has come from Allah, don't blame me. Blame yourself. It's there in a book. You can read so many more books in the world, but you wouldn't read this book, so don't blame me. If you read the book and you don't understand it, so go to someone who can teach you. Show some humility. It'll be beneficial for you. But the book says of itself, it's plain and clear like daylight. Yes, it says that there are two kinds of verses in this book. The first is the verse which is muhkam, plain and clear. All you need is tafsir. And this is the heart of the book. So the law must come from the heart of the book. The belief system must come from the heart of the book. So if you say to me that Allah appointed someone to succeed Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and Allah declared that rule must come from his family alone, and that is therefore a part of the religion, I say to you, would you kindly show me where it is in the Quran? Would you kindly show me where it is located in the Quran? Because the belief system must come from the Quran, And not just from the Quran, it must come from that part of the Quran which is muhkam, plain and clear. But Allah in His wisdom has placed in the Quran a second kind of verse, and that's called the mutashabiha, verses which have to be interpreted. And He did that because there's truth over here which they cannot penetrate. With all their PhDs from Temple University, they cannot penetrate the Quran, because there's one part of the Quran which has to be interpreted, and it can only be interpreted when Allah opens the door for interpretation. Secondly, that when an interpretation is given of the Quran, one must always declare Allah knows best, because you can be right and you can be wrong. The Quran goes on to say, "O Dawood, we have established you on earth as Khalifa. Hence establish governments, rule and law on the basis of truth. وَلَا تَتَّبِعِ الْهَوَىٰ. Do not, O Dawood, turn to any other source for rule, for governance. Don't follow your own agenda that you discuss in Parliament, and then Parliament decides what is to be governments and rule and law, disregarding what has come from Allah. Don't do that. This is the Khalifa, the Khilafah state. Because if you do that, فَيَدِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you establish the state which decides that it has its own sovereignty, it will pass its own laws, it will govern as it chooses to govern, it disregards for Allah, فَيَدِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. You will be misguided. You turn away from the way of Allah. Now listen to the end of the verse carefully, because it's going to be repeated in the grave. And one of the nice things of life is that everybody have to go in the grave one day. One of the nice things about life is that the oppressor also has to go in the grave one day to answer. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَدِلُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ بِمَا نَسُوا يَوْمَ الْحِسَابِ. Those who turn away from rule and governance and law based on truth which has come from Allah, and are therefore misguided from the way of Allah, for them Allah says there is terrible punishment, because they forgot, they were negligent about the day of accounting, the day of Hisab. This is the Khilafah state, and it was established by Nabi Dawood alayhi salam. What is the relationship of the Khilafah state with the rest of the world? Or rather, what is Islam's conception of an international order? It's not a subject which is normally taught in the Darul Uloom anymore. It used to be once upon a time, but now we've forgotten this subject. It's called Siyar. I know it because I'm a student of international relations. And as a student of international relations, I had to go to international relations in the Quran and the Hadith. And that's how I know the subject. Pax Islamica, or the Islamic conception of an international order. How does the Khilafah state relate with the rest of the world? We're just going to give you a little taste of the subject and move on. The world, before I do, let me mention some names. So your homework. The famous scholar, he was also Indian. It's remarkable. It's remarkable how Islamic scholarship in India excelled. His name was Dr. Muhammad Hamidullah, and he hailed from Hyderabad, Deccan, so he's my Hamwatan. Dr. Muhammad Hamidullah wrote a book entitled The Muslim Conduct of State. Pakistani diplomat. Once upon a time you had Pakistani diplomats who were scholars of Islam. His name was Dr. Afzal Iqbal. And he wrote a book entitled Diplomacy in Islam. But the one who is most important of all is the Saudi scholar. Afzal Iqbal is Pakistani. Muhammad Hamidullah is Indian from Hyderabad, Deccan. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman is Saudi Arabia. And he wrote a book on Islam and international, his PhD thesis, Islam and international relation. The world should be a world of salam. So says the Khilafah state. We want a world of peace and security. Did you hear anything about taking a sword and forcing all of mankind to become Muslim and other rubbish like that? Rubbish with a capital R? No. That's not there. The Khilafah state wants a world of salam. Allahu yad'u ila daris salam. A world of peace. A world of security, in which all of mankind, Muslims as well as non-Muslims, everybody have a chance to live in a state of peace and in security, not as what is happening in Yemen today. That is shameful. Poor, innocent Yemen. Not what is happening in Syria today. That is even more shameful. Not what is happening in so many other parts of the world, and our people are refugees. No. The Khilafah state wants a world which is a world of peace and of security. It's called Darus Salam. And when a certain part of the world is committing aggression or is oppressing people, then that part of the world will be declared Darul Harb. This part of the world in which Muslims establish the Khilafah state is called Darul Islam. And with the rest of the world which lives with us in peace and mutual non-aggression, this is Darul Salam, a world of peace and security. And so we then say to Darul Harb, stop your aggression. Stop your oppression. We have to explore and to exhaust all possible peaceful means to resolve the problem. Only after we have explored and we have exhausted all possible peaceful means to resolve the problem, and provided that we have the force, the power to do so, we'll now come after you and we'll fight you. If we do not have the power, we'll have to show patience and make hijrah. But when we do have the power, we will use power, we will use force for the purpose of establishing peace and security on earth. This, in a nutshell, is the Islamic conception of an international order. This, in a nutshell, is how the Khilafah state will relate with the rest of the world. I wish I had the time to turn to a description of the Khilafah state and the economy on the establishment of a fair and free market. I don't have the time, I'm sorry. I wish I had the time to speak about the Khilafah state and the system of money, and how money should always be money with integrity, money with integrity. I wish I had the time to go to the Quran to show how money in Islam always has intrinsic value. That the value of the money is in the money, not in the pockets of a man named George Soros. I wish I had the time to turn and explain to you what is money today. I have studied international monetary economics at 2 universities. I've studied it in the Quran, and I'm not talking out of my hat when I say that the money we are now using today is bogus. It's fraudulent. It's utterly haram. And if you can't find a mufti to say that, don't blame me. Blame mufti. Because I know my subject. It's not going to last for long again, this bogus paper money, because tomorrow, when the war takes place, because they are lusting for war on Russia, they can't wait for war on Russia. And Russia says, we're not afraid of you. Come whenever you want. We are not afraid of you. Russia has Christian people. They tried to make Russia a barbarian communist state, an atheist state. They did not succeed. And my heart beats with happiness. I don't know about yours. I know about mine. That Russia is returning to Orthodox Christianity. For me, that's something joyful. And that the Christian people in Russia, knowing that war is coming, knowing that it's going to be nuclear war, it will happen before the end of this month, it will happen next month. But those who are only eating biryani and going to sleep, they don't care. They don't care. Nuclear war is coming. It's a nuclear war that our Prophet has spoken about, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and we, before I end, we'll return to that subject. They know that most of them will die. But are those Christian people afraid of death? Are they running away from death? Sheikh, tell me where to go that I can be safe. I'm getting all the emails now. No. We are proud and happy that an Orthodox Christian people are showing courage, that they're not afraid to die. And they're prepared to stand up and to face and resist the greatest oppressor that mankind has ever known, about whom the angels said, shall you place on us those who will commit fasad and shed blood? أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. That's happening now. The big war is coming. They're not afraid of it. The war is coming because Russia is challenging their bogus monetary system. That's why. It's not because of Syria. It's not because of Ukraine. It's because of something called BRICS. We don't have the policy, the time, to take you into a description of the Khilafah state on respect of its foreign policy, the economy, the market, the monetary system, and so on. But we do have to take a little time for at least one part of the subject before we move on. So please bear with me. The Quran speaks about two kinds of Christians. Two kinds of Christians. And be careful that you're not negligent with the Quran. Allah speaks in the Quran and says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, O you who, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith, La tattakhidhu al-yahuda wal-nasara awliya, do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. Don't submit to them. Don't pledge your loyalty to the British Crown. That's what they all did. I don't want to mention names because they're going to be very offended. They all pledged their loyalty to the British Crown in order to build a state called Pakistan. They all pledged their loyalty to the British Crown. Not just to the British Parliament or government, that's bad enough. It's worse than that. They pledged their loyalty to the British Crown, every single one of them, except some ulama of distinguished memory in India. Allah says, don't take the Jews and don't take the Christians as your friends and allies. Don't take them as your friends and allies. Is he talking about all Jews and all Christians? Only the schoolboy would say so. Proper methodology will easily lead you to the conclusion, no, Allah could not be talking about all Jews and all Christians, as we'll see in a moment. Well, then which Jews and which Christians? The answer is in the words which follow. بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Do not take such Jews, now listen carefully, do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. In other words, the Quran is anticipating something astonishing. The Christians accuse the Jews of the killing God himself. You can't do worse than that. The crucifixion. So to visualize or to anticipate a reconciliation, a rapprochement and friendship and alliance between a part of the Christian world and a part of the Jewish world is astonishing. And yet that is what Allah is saying is going to happen. When that Jewish-Christian alliance comes into being, listen carefully, the Quran was revealed more than 1,000 years before Iqbal was even born. When that Christian-Jewish, Judeo-Christian alliance comes into being, don't take them as your friends and allies. But Allah goes on to say, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, belong to them. You will no longer belong to us. Come sit over here, please. Yeah. Turn visit here. Can you sit here? Can you sit here? One more, yeah? Make some room here. Don't, if you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you belong to them. You no longer belong to us. Come forward, come forward. If you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you no longer belong to us, you belong to them. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. So if you choose to be friendly with Washington, because the Judeo-Christian alliance has already come into being, it is the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance, which has NATO and its military arm, if you didn't know it. And you choose from day one to remain friends with Washington. Huh? What is your status? What is the status, I have to say, of a Saudi Arabia, which has been a client state of the United States from the time they took over that country, from the Ottomans? What is the status of all the other governments ruling over Muslims who are afraid to step out of the line? They have to put their toe on the line and obey what Washington says, out of fear. Because if you step off the line, your money could become like the Venezuelan Bolivar, and you'll have inflation destroying you and your economy. What is the status of the world of Islam today, which maintains friendly relations with Washington and London and Paris and Bonn and NATO and so on and so on and so on? Who created the United Nations organization? Was it Pakistan? Was it Egypt? Was it Bangladesh? Did the Arabs do it? Who created the International Monetary Fund? If you don't know it, then allow me, politely so, to tell you. It is the Judeo-Christian Alliance, through NATO, who won the First and the Second World War. The NATO came into being. And these victors of the war, they are the ones who established the United Nations. They are the ones who established the International Monetary Fund, etc. And you now become members of these organizations in defiance of Allah's command in the Quran. What is your status? So this is our relationship with one part of the Christian world. We are prohibited by the Quran. But there are people who don't hear, and there are others who don't want to hear. So what can we do for them? Answer: leave them and move on. Because if you have the truth will triumph despite whatever a rival to the truth may seek to do. So leave them and move on. Allah speaks in the Quran about another kind of Christian. Listen carefully now. Listen carefully. These Christians, you must not be friends and allies with them. No, prohibited. But he speaks about another one. He says, لَتَجِدَنَّ. This is the same Surah Al-Ma'idah. You will most certainly find at this time and in time to come, فعل مضارع, أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود. That those who will have the greatest hostility for you will be the Jews. It happened in the lifetime of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and it never recurred for 1,000 years or more. No. Until the Zionist movement was established more than 100 years ago. And now once again, it has re-emerged, exactly as in the Quran. وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. You'll also find the people who have the greatest hatred for you would be a people who at that time were the mushrikun, the people of blasphemy, worshipping idols and so on. It happened at that time and now again, because you have a new people who say today, no longer is Allah al-Hakam, as in the Khilafah state. The state is now al-Hakam. And if you didn't know it, let me introduce you to the Republican state. If you did not know it, let me introduce you to the Republican state. Allah is no longer al-Hakam. The state is now al-Hakam, meaning the state will decide how to govern. The state has absolute supremacy. The state will decide how to rule. The state will decide on law. Allah can make it haram, the state can make it halal. It is modern Western civilization which gave us the Republican state, and Iqbal knew that very well. Of course he did. And Allah says, these will be the ones showing the greatest hatred and hostility for you. And so it is today. The war on Islam is being waged by these people. The mountain of lies are coming from them. But Allah speaks and He continues to say, and listen carefully, وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. My students have heard me saying this so often they're fed up now. But there are those who have not heard it so far, so allow me to repeat it. And you will most certainly find at that time, when the Jews re-emerge with the greatest hatred for you, at that time, when these people who are built on shirk emerge with the greatest hatred for you, at that time you will find a people who will show the greatest love and affection for you. And they will be a people who proclaim, we are Christians. Oh, but wait a minute. They don't proclaim themselves Christians in the United States, and Britain and France. No. Religion is a private affair. We've been secularized. We proclaim ourselves French and British and American. And religion is for Sunday morning. But these are a different kind of Christian people. قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. They proclaim themselves, their identity. We are Christians. So this could not be Western Christianity. Kindly eliminated. A Christian people who will be closest in love and affection for you Muslims at that time. The Quran goes on to say, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ كِسِّسِينَ. The reason why they will behave like this is because they have the institution of the ulama intact. The religious scholars still have a status in that Christian people. That side of the world, the religious scholarship is gone. But this side of the world, the ulama of the Christians still have a very high status and a very important function in society. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ كِسِّسِينَ. And then Allah goes on to say something else, a third thing, وَالرُّهْبَانَ. And that is because they still have the institution of monasticism. Or eliminate Western Christianity, because the monastery in Britain is now McDonald's hamburgers. The monastery is now Kentucky Fried. Monastic way of life is disappearing. Indeed, the churches of Britain are being sold now. Masajid are coming up where there used to be a church. 4% of the British people now go to church. Britain is essentially an atheist country. But these Christian people still have monasticism. They still have the monastery. They still have the monk. Which Christian people is Allah talking about? And then Allah says a fourth thing about them. وَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. They're not an arrogant people. They don't want to rule the world. And because Russia is not prepared to submit, and China is not prepared to submit, they will wage nuclear war and destroy most of the world. Because they are an arrogant people, they want to rule the world. So then which Christians are we talking about? Answer, we're talking about the Orthodox Christian. He doesn't have Christmas on the 25th of December. And he doesn't have a gentleman with a big white beard who flies through the sky on a reindeer, a fellow called Santa Claus. on the 25th of December. No, no, no. When you go to the Orthodox Christian church as when I went to Moscow, I found there were no chairs. None. It was like a masjid. Yes. An Orthodox Christian, I cannot mention his name, he's a prominent Christian, Russian military analyst and political analyst, is coming to visit me. I'm honored to have such an important man coming to visit me, to spend some time with me. And the man makes mention about dietary rules. These are our dietary rules. What we can eat during this Lenten season and what we cannot eat. Huh? And hope that it will not cause any problems for Imran. And I am amazed because over there they eat everything and anything. They don't care anymore about halal and haram. And so I share with you now, finally, that the Khilafah state would recognize the Orthodox Christian world, which today is led by Russia, that these are the people Allah is talking about in the Quran, that they will be closest in love and affection for you. Does Iqbal recognize the Khilafah state as important? Does Iqbal recognize that the Khilafah state has been lost when Mustafa Kemal abolished it in 1924? Does Iqbal long for the Khilafah state to be restored? Let's answer that question with a beautiful verse of Urdu. I just check my Urdu before the lecture to ensure I don't make any mistakes. It was Dr. Israr Ahmad who introduced me to this verse of Iqbal. Ta khilafat ki bina dunya mein ho phir istawar. If the Khilafah state is to be restored, one more time, Satulagi, one more time. Ja kahi se dhoond kar, aslaf ka qalbo jigar. Correct? Go and search for that metal, that backbone made of steel of the early Muslims, qalbo jigar. The backbone made of steel, the metal of irresistible courage, unflinching devotion, unshakable commitment to the cause. Go find such people if you want the Khilafah state to be restored. And thank Allah that He said these words, because this is proof which cannot be shaken, that in his heart when Iqbal spoke to his own people, not to the crown, not to the crown, not to the world of Western scholarship. When Iqbal spoke to his own people, and when he spoke from his heart, he wanted the Khilafah state to be restored, and he was warning you, you can't do it unless you have a backbone made of steel, unless you have the metal in you of unflinching devotion and commitment and courage. This is Iqbal in Urdu. But Iqbal also recognized, and now we come to a very important part of the subject, Iqbal also recognized that the Khilafah state could not survive, and the Khilafah state could not be restored at his time. He never said so. because he couldn't say so in public. No. The implications would have been too difficult for him. But he did say so between the lines. Again we go to the Quran. A new actor has appeared on the stage of the world. An actor who came out of nowhere. Great civilizations have come and gone. But this one never appeared on the stage of the world before. Now suddenly, not only is this new actor on the stage of the world, he takes over the world. He is spread out in all directions. And with an irresistible power, he's established his own world order. And this actor is an oppressor. He uses power to oppress. This actor wants the Khilafah to be destroyed. Who is this actor? He wants the Khilafah to be destroyed because once there is a Khilafah state, he cannot achieve his objective of establishing a state of Israel in the Holy Land. This actor has an objective, a goal. He wants to liberate the Holy Land for the Jews. He wants to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. He wants to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land, while of course, we eating our biryani and going to sleep. Excuse me, my language is a little bitter now because I've been talking about something for too long and nobody is listening. He wants to not only restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land, but he wants that Israel to rule the world. He's almost there now. The war which is coming, the big nuclear war which is coming, to which we'll refer subsequently, inshallah, is meant to deliver to Israel something called Pax Judaica, which will replace Pax Americana, which itself replaced Pax Britannica. That's why they want the big war. Who is this actor who wants the Khilafah to be destroyed by hook or by crook? Who is this actor? This dominant civilization? Only Iqbal knew the answer. No one else. None of the ulama, none of the maulanas, none of the shuyukh, not Deoban, not Brelvi, no one knew it. None. None of the distinguished scholars of Islam, of the world of Islam, nobody knew it. With the possible exception of Sayyid Nursi, Badiuzzzaman of Turkey. But Iqbal it was who said, and I now have to quote him again in Urdu, and they can't take it away from him. You can't do it. It's there. खुल गए यअजूज और मअजूज के लश्कर तमाम. Some of you will say, oh, we heard this before, but we never thought about it. खुल गए यअजूज और मअजूज के लश्कर तमाम. All the forces of Gog and Magog have now been released. It's not just that they have been released from behind the barrier built by Zulkarnain in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. More than that. They've all been released and they've all spread out over the world. Kul gaye ya'juj or ma'juj ke lashkar tamam. All. So this is the world order of Gog and Magog. That is what Iqbal is saying. Chashme Muslim dekhle tafsir harfi yansilu. Now Muslims, you better turn your eyes, direct your attention to the word yansilun. Direct your attention to the word yansilun. Only one scholar in the whole world of Islam, only one, not only recognized it, but proclaimed it. But he said it to his countrymen. In English to the British Crown and to the Western world, he never spoke a word. He was totally silent on this side. Iqbal was totally silent on this side. Nothing in his scholarly writings. But in Urdu, to his countrymen, he's speaking with his heart. What is this word yansilun? He's referring to the Quran. That's what he's doing. Allah is speaking in the Quran about Gog and Magog, who are not some strange creatures from Mars or Venus, or living somewhere deep in the interior of the earth. No, they're human beings. Stop that nonsense. Allah is speaking about Gog and Magog, who have PhDs in oppression. In the Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. That is Surah Al-Kahf. My book here is on Surah Al-Kahf. You can have the time, you just read it. It's an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world. Gog and Magog are people created by Allah, and He gave them a power that is irresistible, and they use that power to oppress. So Zulkarnain built a barrier, and to use the language of chess, he checkmated them. He didn't destroy them. He checkmated them, means they're harmless. And you know, when Allah said Qarnain, Zulkarnain, Qarn can mean a horn, or Qarn can mean an age. Which one? It doesn't mean horn here. Because every time Allah uses the word Qarn in the Quran, He refers to an age. So Surah Al-Kahf is speaking about Zulkarnain, who will manifest power on two occasions. And on two occasions he's going to checkmate Gog and Magog. The first time he did it by building a barrier. And we know where it was located. From the Quran, do your homework. Where is my book? Yes, this one. It was there in the Caucasus Mountains, the Black Sea. And Crimea commands the Black Sea. If you control Crimea, you control the Black Sea. Did you hear that? This is the first time. And Allah is saying there's a second time. Satulagi, Iqbal, that power is going to re-emerge in that part of the world. And that power is going to do the same thing it did the first time. It's going to checkmate them, and NATO can do nothing to stop it. Praise be to Allah, who allowed us to understand the Quran. They're going to be checkmated as they were the first time. Iqbal is speaking about that Gog and Magog. And in Surah Al-Anbiya, there are two verses which end with the word yansilun. Chashme Muslim dekhli tafsir harf yansilun. In Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah says, وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. Allah speaks of a town which He destroyed. And having destroyed that town, He expelled the people. And then placed a ban on them that they can never return to reclaim that town as their own. Hatta, until when? Hatta إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج. Until Gog and Magog are released. Futihat, Fataha, to open. Until Fatiha, Surah Al-Fatiha, opening. Futihat, until Gog and Magog are released. وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. And after being released, They spread out in all directions, taking control of the world in the world order of Gog and Magog. Iqbal recognized it. Iqbal understood that Gog and Magog were released. Iqbal understood that we have lost the Khilafah because of Gog and Magog. And Iqbal knew that the Khilafah cannot be restored so long as Gog and Magog control the world. He knew it. And he said it. But he said it to his people in Urdu. But to the rest of the world he spoke something else. Regretfully so. Regretfully so. And now we tread very carefully because we want to show the utmost respect for Iqbal. When he spoke to the English-educated people, and the British government was listening, when he spoke and wrote in English, his response was different, regrettably so. What he should have said, it's not possible for us to restore the Khilafah state now. I can't tell you why, but it's not possible. But it will be possible later, so don't give up. Do not surrender the Khilafah state. If he had said that, the world of Islam would have understood this is a great scholar talking. He knows what he's saying. It is not possible now, at this time, to restore the Khilafah state. But circumstances are going to change, and there is a tomorrow which is coming, when you will be able to struggle to restore the Khilafah state. So do not surrender the Khilafah state. That is all he had to do, but he did not do it. On the contrary, he said that, where is it? Here we are. That when the Khilafah was abolished by Mustafa Kemal in 1924, the Khilafah state was abolished. The Turkish Grand National Assembly issued a declaration. And I read for you from my book, The Caliphate, the Hijaz, and the Saudi Wahhabi Nation State. The Khalifa is deposed. The office of the Khilafah is abolished, since the Khilafah is essentially comprised in the meaning and significance of the words government, as hukuma, and republic, jumhuriyah. In other words, what we now have in Turkey, the secular Republic of Turkey, this is the Khilafah. This is a new form of the Khilafah state. And Iqbal responded by saying, yes, they are correct. And in order for us to adjust, it's going to break your heart now, I know. It's going to break your heart. In order for us to adjust to this new world of the Republican state, which is an adequate substitute for the Khilafah, according to the Iqbal, it is necessary for us to engage in something called the reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. No. 1,000 times no, Iqbal. With all due respect for you, there is no need to reconstruct religious thought in Islam. The Khilafah state will not be surrendered. And the modern republican state is not and can never be a substitute for the Khilafah. A very good book written by a Pakistani scholar with an enormous amount of research for a PhD thesis, Naeem Qureshi, and I want his book to be shown on this video, Pan-Islam in British Indian Politics, Pan-Islam in British Indian Politics, a study of the Khilafat movement 1918 to 1924, the Khilafat movement of India. He's done an enormous amount of research, and I commend him for this work. Many times I differ with his analysis, but the research work is important. The Muslims of India did not want to surrender the Khilafah. No. There were 4 centers of the world of Islam which had to respond to Mustafa Kemal. The first, of course, was the ulama of Turkey. The second was Egypt with Al-Azhar University. The third was Arabia, the jihads with Makkah and Medina. And the fourth was Muslim India. These are the 4 most important parts of the world of Islam intellectually. And out of these 4, the one which distinguished itself with the most powerful response of all was India. Muslim India. Muslim India responded with the Khilafat movement. We do not have the time to analyze the weaknesses in the Khilafat movement, and there were significant weaknesses in it. Yes. Recognizing the Ottoman Khilafah as a valid Khilafah, and that is our Khalifa. Excuse me, sir, is this your Islam? Where the Khilafah state could take Christian boys and convert them to Islam by force? And if a Christian boy refused to become Muslim, you kill him? Is that your Islam? It's not mine. You pledge your allegiance to the Ottoman Islamic Khilafah? And that these Christian boys will now become the Janissaries, they're trained to become the elite fighting force of the Ottoman Empire. And so when the Ottoman army goes to wage a bogus jihad on the Orthodox Christians, the heart of the fighting force will be their own sons, to add fuel to the fire. And when you wage your bogus jihad on the innocent Orthodox Christians and you defeat them, you seize their women and make them slaves. Is that your Islam? It's not mine. It's not mine. And you never get married. The Ottoman Sultan and Khalifa never married. No, he had a stable full of women, like you have a stable filled with horses. These were the slave women with whom he cohabited. And he called them Milk al-Yamin. And with them he'll have children. But he'll never marry, so he never has a son. And from amongst these will come the new Sultan. So when the Ottoman army wages war on a Christian people, it's their own son who is the Khalifa. Is that your Islam? It's not mine. And when the Ottomans took control of Constantinople in 1453, they took the most magnificent cathedral of the entire Orthodox Christian world, Hagia Sophia, and shamefully sinfully converted it into a masjid. Is that your Islam? It's not mine. You can take that Islam and throw it into a garbage bin. That's not the Islam that came from Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. That's not the Islam that came from Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who when the Christian patriarch in Jerusalem invited him to perform his salat in the Christian church, he said, no, it's the time of prayer, but I will not pray in the church. You go outside and pray. because I don't want it tomorrow to come when someone will come and take over this church and transform it into a masjid. This is my Islam, that is yours. And you pledge your allegiance, the whole of Muslim India, to that Khilafah. That's one of the big weaknesses of the Khilafah movement. What they should have concentrated on was the Khilafah state, not so much the Ottoman Khilafah. Iqbal, I'm quoting from Naim Qureshi on page 384. Iqbal is not happy with the Khilafat movement. He's not supporting the Khilafat movement. He's out of tune with the Khilafat movement. No. And this is what he says. Iqbal, I quote, pinned his hopes in a revitalized Turkey. Which had, in his opinion, not only shaken off its dogmatic slumber, but had also passed from the ideal of a Khilafah state to the real, which is a Republican state, a transition which entails keen intellectual and moral struggle. No, Iqbal, you're wrong. Turkey alone, says Iqbal, among all the Muslim countries, had embarked on the way of creating new values. Therefore, the Turks were perfectly sound in their view that the institution of the Khilafah, as understood in the traditional juridical sense, was anachronistic, and that an elected assembly, which was suited to the need of the time, was not incompatible with the spirit of Islam and should replace the institution of the Khilafah. Parliament. Pragmatic reconstruction of his own religious thought, which happened to be compatible and even synonymous with those of the followers of Mustafa Kemal. And so we say to you, Iqbal has made a mistake, and we must not be criticized if we say he made a mistake. But Iqbal saved himself, as every great scholar would do it. Listen to what he says. It must, however, be remembered, there is no such thing as finality in philosophical thinking. And as knowledge advances and fresh avenues of thought are opened, other views, and probably sounder views than those set forth in these lectures, are possible. Our duty is to carefully watch the progress of human thought and to maintain an independent, critical attitude towards it. These are golden words of Iqbal. You'll find it in my book, Iqbal and Pakistan's Moment of Truth. Now then, is Pakistan a Khilafah state? Answer: Pakistan says of itself that it is a Republican state. That's the name of the country, Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So it is a Republican state. And the Republican state, by definition, is a state in which Allah is no longer Al-Hakam. So you can do all the kinds of acrobatics you want to do with your objectives resolution. All the acrobatics you want with your objectives resolution. A Republican state is by definition a state in which Allah is no longer Al-Hakam. You do not govern and rule on the basis of Al-Haq or truth, but rather it is the people who decide. That's a Republican state. But it also declares that it is an Islamic state. And there's only one way to interpret the word Islamic, that's all, only one. And that is that Pakistan is claiming that it is a Khilafah state. Full stop. Once you say you are an Islamic state, it implies that you're claiming to be a Khilafah state, full stop. You can't be a Khilafah state and also a Republican state. So someone has to solve this problem in Pakistan. You cannot be a Khilafah state and also a Republican state. Well then, what do we do? Answer, we have to recognize that Pakistan is a member of the United Nations organization and has remained comfortably a member of the United Nations organization from the day it was born. Ahmad Sukarno took Indonesia out of the United Nations, but no one ever in the history of Pakistan even raised the subject. So Pakistan has been comfortably a member of the United Nations organization from day one. And therefore, supreme authority does not lie with Allah. The Security Council of the United Nations, Article 25 and 26 of the Charter of the UN, if you want, you can go and check it out. They control power. If the United Nations give you an order to stand up, the Security Council, you got to stand up. Allah could tell you sit down, but if the Security Council says stand up, you have to stand up. That's a Republican state. Pakistan has been a member of the International Monetary Fund from day one. No one has ever shown any discomfort in Pakistan. None. No leader, no government, no party. If I'm wrong, kindly correct me. I'd be very happy to know. The International Monetary Fund says, Allah made this halal, but we are making it haram. That's there in the International Monetary Fund, the Articles of Agreement. Go check it out. Go and check it out. If you make haram what Allah made halal, it is shirk. And if you accept what they have done, you are now a part of the shirk. It is the one sin that Allah will never forgive if you die with that sin. Maybe this explains the hadith that you never hear anybody quoting, but is there in Sahih Bukhari, that on Judgment Day Allah will say to Adam alayhi salam, take out the people for Jahannam. And Adam alayhi salam will ask, how many are they, O Allah? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say to Adam alayhi salam, out of every 1,000, take 999 for Jahannam. It's only shirk which can explain that, nothing else. This hadith, this, what is it called now? Hadith which comes from Allah, what do you call it? Qudsi. Hadith al-Qudsi is actually sending a warning that there is going to be universal shirk in the world, so watch it. Pakistan is using the same bogus, fraudulent, utterly haram paper money, in consequence of which the masses are now miserably poor, while an elite drives around in expensive cars and live in luxurious villas and send their children to British and American universities, and they have a villa, yes, in Los Angeles, and they have another one in Miami, and oh yeah, because they're the shoeshine boys of those who use the monetary system to impoverish the masses. The Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund make it haram to use gold as money. Even a schoolboy could understand. Even a schoolboy with the intellectual acumen of a schoolboy would be able to understand the reason why they made gold haram is because so long as you have gold in the market, their bogus monetary system cannot exist. Even a schoolboy could understand that. So is Pakistan a Khilafah state? The answer is no. Can Pakistan become a Khilafah state? For Iqbal, and only Iqbal, nobody else, it is possible for Pakistan to become a Khilafah state at a certain point in time. Only Iqbal, nobody else. Nobody else talks on the subject of Gag and Magog. We now come to the end of the lecture. That the moment in the historical process is approaching. And when that moment occurs, the backbone of Gog and Magog will begin to break. And as that backbone begins to break, a window of opportunity is then opened. And in that opportunity which now emerges, perhaps the best people, the people who are best placed in the world of Islam to wage a struggle for the restoration of a Khilafah state is Pakistan. It's Pakistan. It cannot be the Arab world. Why? Because our Prophet prophesied the Arabs are going to be destroyed. And he linked the destruction of the Arabs to Gog and Magog. We don't have the time to quote that hadith. Now let us come to the last part of the lecture. That the Khilafah state can be restored. And when the Khilafah state is restored, it won't be a member of the United Nations. It will have no superior authority over it. It won't be a member of the International Monetary Fund. No. It'll be using dinar and dirham as money. Yes. The Khilafah state can be restored. But before we turn to the hadith, which explains why and when it can be restored, I have a surprise for you. A bitter surprise. That there are people in the world today who are struggling to establish a Khilafah state. That's what they're doing. A bogus Khilafah state, but a Khilafah state. They want the state of Israel to become a Khilafah state. And when the angel said, remember, O Allah, you're putting mankind on the earth to establish the Khilafah. أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you placing on earth those who will cause the historical process to be filled with fasad and bloodshed? That the historical process is now going to be corrupted and contaminated by those who want to establish a bogus Khilafah state? Yes, the angels knew it was going to commence with Pax Britannica. And with Pax Britannica you had fasad all over the world. Fasad is not only that which corrupts, but corrupts in such a way that it destroys. The British wanted the Khilafah state to be surrendered. And in order to get the Khilafah state surrendered, they needed more than Mustafa Kemal. Because they knew the world of Islam cannot be hoodwinked forever by Mustafa Kemal. They knew that the surrender of the Khilafah state is not possible in the Arab world. So they turned to India. They turned to Muslim India. And they had to get Muslim India to surrender the Khilafah state in order for them to achieve the objective of the Muslim world surrendering the Khilafah state. And that's what they did in India. They surrendered the Khilafah state. And they did it mostly because Iqbal made this mistake. It's going to be hard to swallow, but it has to enter into the record that Muslim India recognized the new leadership that emerged after the Khilafat movement collapsed. That if Britain wanted Muslims to surrender the Khilafah state, they're going to have to pay a price for it. Britain never wanted Pakistan to be born. No. Britain detested a Pakistan being born as an Islamic state. Hindu India did not want a Pakistan to be born. No. But there was no way they could stop it. The leadership of the Muslims recognized an opportunity that yes, if we surrender the Khilafah state, the price that they'll have to pay is Pakistan. If they want us to surrender the Khilafah state, the price that they will have to pay is Pakistan, which is a republican state. The British bit their fingers in anguish, and the Hindus bit their fingers and so on, but they could not avoid it. And so that opportunity that was grasped resulted in the creation of Pakistan. Yes, it's a republican state. Yes, there's shirk everywhere. When I went to Pakistan as a student in 1964, $1 was worth 1 rupee, 75 paisa. $1 today is worth about 105 or 110 Pakistani rupees. And if the government of Pakistan were to make a step towards Russia, it might go to 200. That's how they punish you. Pakistan was born, therefore, as a republican state, and the British had to concede it. Can this Pakistan become a Khilafah state? Is it possible for it to become a Khilafah state? Because of the way Muslims of India responded, I am of the opinion that when the war now takes place, the nuclear war which is coming, could come even before the US elections, because they're afraid of Trump, that a window of opportunity is now going to be opened, because there's going to be a crack in the backbone of Gog and Magog. And a movement can now be launched by those who, according to Iqbal, who have Chashme Musla, Doon Kar Aslaf Ko Kalbo Jigar. Go search for those who have that courage, that backbone made of steel of the early Muslims, if you want to restore the Khilafah state. Our Prophet said, Hadith is in the Sunan of Abi Dawood, and with this we'll end. He's talking about events in the historical process in Akhirul Zaman. And he said, he's speaking to his companion Mu'az ibn Jabal, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says to him, Mu'az, Umranu Bayt al-Maqdis kharabu Yathrib. Wait until you see Jerusalem emerging built up, center stage in world affairs. And at that time, look to Medina. When you see Medina, Kharabu Yathrib, in a state of forlorn desolation. How you say that in Urdu? Forlorn desolation. Give me a nice Urdu expression. Sabina, huh? Kharab? Tabawi. No, that's not adequate enough. Forlorn desolation. Huh? Abandoned. No, I want to get an Urdu expression because there are lots of people in Pakistan are going to be listening to this lecture. Okay, maybe Urdu doesn't have it. Umran Bayt al-Maqdis Kharabu Yathrib. When you see Jerusalem built up, shining center stage in the world, then look to Medina. And when you see Medina in a state of forlorn desolation, Kharabu Yathrib, then Kharabu Yathrib Khurujul Malhama. Then look, because the next event that is going to come, major in the historical process, will be the Malhama. The Malhama. Has the Malhama occurred as yet? No. No. Where is the proof? No. Where is the proof? The Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Malhama when he said in the hadith of Sahih Bukhari that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. And people will fight for that gold. But 99 out of every 100 who fight for that gold will be killed. Meaning, this would be a unique war in human history. A war like no war has ever been before, which would kill 99% of combatants. This is the Malhama. And everyone who fights for that goal would say, I'll be the one who will survive. So when they enter that Malhama, they don't know who's going to win.
Can you explain the Malhama?
The Malhama is a great war, a great war, prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, which will occur in Akhir Zaman, the end time. The Christians know it as Armageddon. Armageddon, a great war. I asked the question, has the Malhama occurred as yet? And I went to another hadith which throws light on the Malhama. That there will be a war in which 99% of all combatants will be killed. And I've said, no war in history has been like that. None. This is a unique war. Nor can this be conventional warfare. No. This has to be warfare using weapons of mass destruction, like nuclear weapons. And he said, no one will know who will survive, the one who will survive. But the Muslims must not touch that goal. Those who wish to wait for a mountain of the metal to come out of the river, a literal interpretation, have the right to do so. We've understood this as religious symbolism, and we've said this occurred in 1974, when an ocean of oil underneath the river began to function as a mountain of gold, and the petrodollar was born. But never accept Imran's opinion. No, until you're convinced that he's correct. And so the Malhama is now around the corner. But what happens after the Malhama? I believe we've settled the case that the Malhama has not as yet occurred, the one prophesied by Prophet Muhammad. We've settled that case. That Malhama is coming because Russia is challenging the mountain of gold. It's challenging with bricks. So what happens after the Malhama? Listen to what he said. And NATO can take it and put it in their pipe and smoke it. He said, خروج الملحمة فتح القسطنطينية. That the great war of the Malhama would be followed by the conquest of Constantinople. That is why they changed the name of the city. That is why they made it illegal to even use the name of Constantinople. You go to Turkey and you use the name Constantinople, you can be arrested because they wanted to hide what the Prophet said. The conquest of Constantinople in 1453 was bogus. Islam has never ordained jihad against Christians. Where did that rubbish come from with a capital R? Is that your religion? The Ottomans waged bogus jihad on the Christians. Did the Christians attack them? Were they responding to the Christians? No. And when the Ottomans took the city of Constantinople, it was brave and courageous Christians who were defending it on that day. And they were defending themselves against an aggressor. And so I have said it, and I don't care who differs with me and who is annoyed and angry. The shuhada who fell on that day were the Orthodox Christians who died in defending Constantinople. They were the shuhada. And you tell me that is the conquest of Constantinople prophesied by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Please go and do your homework. Don't make a fool of yourself. I'm sorry if I call you a fool. I apologize. Please do your homework. I don't intend to insult anybody. No, it's not my way. Go and do your homework. The conquest of Constantinople in 1453 is not the conquest prophesied by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Not only because it was bogus, but also because the conquest of Constantinople comes after the Malhama, not before. The Malhama has not occurred as yet. It could occur before the US elections. Prepare yourself. A nuclear war. Most of us will die. And we are proud that the Orthodox Christians of Russia are brave and courageous, and they're not afraid of death. If a Christian people could be unafraid of death, why should Muslims be afraid of death? Why? The conquest of Constantinople, which comes after the Malhama, indicates that the backbone of NATO is being broken. Because NATO, or the Western Christianity, wants control over the Bosphorus. The control over the Bosphorus they had for 500 years were through their client state, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were clients of the Western world. And when the Ottoman Empire collapsed, then the secular state of Turkey became a member of NATO and controlled the Bosphorus again for Western Christianity, for NATO. So they have controlled the Bosphorus for hundreds of years now. And when the Malhama takes place, and then the conquest of Constantinople occurs, the implication would be that Gog and Magog are being broken. They're not completely broken yet, they're being broken. Well, then how will this take place? Answer, we go back to Surah Al-Kahf. We go back to Qarnayn, Zulqarnain. Zulqarnain means 2 ages. In one age, Gog and Magog are checkmated. He built a barrier. But in the second age, Gog and Magog will again be checkmated. This is the Quran. NATO, you can take that and put it in your pipe and smoke it. Islamic eschatology is telling you that you're going to be checkmated. This is the Quran. And when Gog and Magog's back are being broken, the implication is that a window of opportunity is now opening. If Iqbal were alive, he would say to you, this is the time. The Muslims of Pakistan are perhaps the best placed in the world to launch a movement. As soon as the war begins, stop whatever you're doing. Forget about Brelvi and Deobandi fighting and all of this nonsense. All of this nonsense. Stop it. And all of the Muslims must now launch a movement for the restoration of a Khilafah state. Even if you don't succeed until Imam al-Mahdi comes, at least you're making an effort to do it. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may forgive us if we made any mistakes, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bless Dr. Iqbal for the greatness of his scholarship, forgive him for his mistakes, and grant that these words may be truths that will be accepted by Allah, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bless those who now wage an effort to restore the Khilafah state. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ آمين.
A sea, to say that one time we used to have water.
Yeah.
What event is that?
The question is, where do you locate the information about Gog and Magog going to a sea? A link of Gog and Magog with a sea, with a body of water. The answer is located in the Quran. That the Jews had been asked by the pagan Arabs, how can we tell whether this man, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, is indeed a prophet? So the Jews, the rabbis responded in Medina and said, ask him these three questions, which only a prophet can answer. My book, Surah Al-Kahf in the Modern Age, described it. One of the questions was asked him about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land. And the answer was given in Surah Al-Kahf. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. And they questioned thee, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, about the great traveler, Dhul Qarnayn, who traveled to the two ends of the land. Tell him, I'm going to tell you something about him. We established him with power on earth, gave him therefore the capacity to pursue whatever effort he chose to pursue. So he decided on traveling in the direction of the setting of the sun until he came to a body of water. So that's the farthest he can go. And the body of water was dark and murky. So visibility is very shallow. And there he came across the people, and Allah said, what are you going to do? How will you relate with them? How will you use power? Zulkarnain's power rests on faith. So when power rests on the foundations of faith, how will power be used? And he said, those who are guilty of acts of oppression and wickedness, I'll punish them. So power will be used to punish the oppressor. And when I'm finished and they return to you, you will also punish them. So there'll be harmony between this world order and that one. And those who have faith and are righteous in conduct, I'll treat them well and protect them and so on. Then he traveled in the opposite direction until he came to the end of the land, which of course has to be another body of water. And there he came across the people. لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا, for whom we had provided nothing else as a covering to protect them. So maybe a people living a primitive way of life. And Zulkarnain used power very compassionately. He left them as they were. Then he traveled in a third direction to a pass between the mountains. We're able to locate this geographical location in the Quran, because we know that when he reached that pass between the mountains, it was there that he encountered Gog and Magog. There. The people asked him to build a barrier, and he built it made of iron, coated with copper. And he checkmated Gog and Magog, who were committing oppression, fasad. And he said, when Allah ordains, He's going to bring down this barrier, which is in Akhirul Zaman. And when they are released, Gog and Magog are going to go to Jerusalem. And on their way to Jerusalem, they will pass by the Sea of Galilee. And they start to drink the water. And by the time the last of them pass, they will say, why are you afraid to say it? They will say, there used to be water here in the Sea of Galilee. The water level in the Sea of Galilee has gone down so low now that the little island just appeared last week, I think. The water level is going down. Gog and Magog therefore has to be coming from the north. If they're going to pass the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem, they're coming from the north. Are you following? This is geography. If you're going to pass by the Sea of Galilee on your way to Jerusalem, you're coming from the north. If you're coming from the north, look to the west where there is water. Only two bodies of water. One is the Mediterranean Sea, and the other is the Black Sea. Water level, the water in the Mediterranean Sea is so good you can see a couple meters below. But why is it called the Black Sea? Because that's what it is. It's a sea covered with algae, and you cannot see more than about 1 meter. That's why they call it the Black Sea. And the Quran is referring to the Black Sea. That when Zulkarnain traveled in the direction of the setting of the sun, west, he came to the Black Sea. And when he traveled in the direction of the rising of the sun, end of the land, he came to the Caspian Sea. And when he went on the third journey north, he came across the Caucasus Mountains. And in between the Caucasus Mountain, there was a pass called the Darial Gorge, and that is where he built the barrier made of steel, made of iron and coated with copper. And he said, when Allah ordains it, فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّةً, Allah is going to bring it down. Okay? When will it be brought down? Nabi Muhammad ﷺ is asleep at the home of his wife Zainab, and he sees something in his sleep. It's a vision. It's terrible. He wakes up with his face flushed red, and he said, Wailul lil Arab, woe unto the Arabs, min sharrin qad iktaraba, because of a great evil which is now approaching. Then he raised his hands and put his finger like this. He said, today a hole has been made in the barrier. And so the release of Gog and Magog is now commencing. Commencing. She asked, أَنُخْلَقُ وَفِينَا الصَّالِحُونَ? Will we Arabs be destroyed even though there are righteous amongst us? He said, Na'am. The Arabs are going to be destroyed even though there are righteous amongst them. So this is not destruction for punishment. No, destruction for another reason. That's why Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam had the vision. He's going to sacrifice his son Ismail alayhi salam. The Arabs are the children of Ismail alayhi salam. That's the sacrifice. He said, the Arabs are going to destroy when? إِذَا كَثُرَ الْخَبَثِ, when rubbish prevails. The destruction of the Arabs will come. Amongst the rubbish in the world today, the one that smells the worst is paper money. Oh yeah. It is the instrument of exploitation, the instrument of enslavement of the people. And the Islamic Republic of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which proudly proclaims itself an Islamic Republic. 37 years have passed, and they still have the bogus, fraudulent, utterly haram Iranian rial. I went to Iran so many times, talked to them, can't get them to change. Finally, I met with one of the advisors of the Ayatollah Khamenei, Hassan Rahimpur. I went to meet with him in Mashhad, and I had to ask him a direct question to get an answer. I asked him, is it unjust? Is it exploitative? Is it oppressive, the monetary system? He said yes. I said, can I quote you? He said yes. For the first time, Then I went to Shiraz. You know the famous poet Hafiz in Shiraz? And in Shiraz I met Ayatollah bin Azadi. And I asked Ayatollah, I said, Ayatollah, that's what Rahimpur said, that it is unjust, it is exploitative, it is oppressive. What do you say? He looked at me, he smiled. He said, this is the root of all evil in Iran. The monetary system. This rubbish, when it prevails, the Arabs are going to be destroyed. Gog and Magog will destroy them. That destruction of the Arabs is coming. And this is why I have said, if the Khilafah state is to be restored, the non-Arabs will have to do it. Sorry, he's in charge, not me. Answer her?
Yes.
What's the question?
What is this implement individually every person? We have our resources. How use resources for Akhirah and Dunya?
I think I mentioned that the term Karnain can either mean two horns or two ages. Did I not? I did?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. Good. And I said that we cannot use the name Karnain to mean two horns. Why? Because Allah has never used the word Karn in the Quran to mean horn. And over 12 times in the Quran he uses the word qarn to mean age or epoch. And therefore I concluded that Zulqarnain implies power which will impact on the historical process, resting on the foundations of faith on two occasions. The first is the one which is described in Surah Al-Kahf, and the second is the one which is to come. If the first one came when Zulqarnain had to build a barrier in order to save the world from Gog and Magog, it follows that the second one will come when Zulqarnain will have to do the same thing, to checkmate Gog and Magog. I gave you my opinion, and I warned you not to accept my opinion unless you're convinced that I am correct. But no one should be so arrogant as to say, I do not have the right to offer my opinion. And my opinion is that the second one of the two Qarnains is about to occur. And I have said it will occur in the same region. When Russia took control of Crimea 2 years ago, I said it's time for Imran to celebrate. It's time for Imran to celebrate when Russia took back Crimea, okay? Because I knew that what is in Surah Al-Kahf is about to take place, yeah.
Do we have one more question there? We have one other written one.
You have two questions.
I have two questions. I will ask one by one.
One by one.
The first one on the subject of flourishes of Jerusalem and isolation of Medina. My question is, has the flourishes of Jerusalem has already happened or going to happen? I will ask another question.
The question is, in connection with the hadith of the Sunan of Abi Dawood, in which Nabi Muhammad ﷺ prophesied events. One was the state of Jerusalem is flourishing, built up, and the second of Medina is kharab, and the third would be the Malhama or the Great War. The answer is Jerusalem is already in a commanding position in the world today. Jerusalem controls the US Congress, and the United States is the ruling state in the world today. The Israeli Prime Minister stood up and said it publicly. We control the US Congress. So what more do you want? This means that Jerusalem is already in a commanding position in the world stage. As for Medina being in forlorn desolation, everybody can see that. Yes, this has already occurred. Next question.
So, as you said, now the Malhama is around the corner. Does the World War II?
The third event, in my opinion, is about to occur, and that is the Malhama or the Great War. And I am not the only one. Oh no. There are analysts around the world, many analysts around the world, who are all saying the same thing, that world war is around the corner. The only people who seem to be, excuse me, please excuse me, because my bitterness inside of me is too great now. My frustration is too much now. The only people who seem to be content with eating biryani and going home and sleep are the scholars of Islam.
Just before your question, we have one that was submitted in writing. Perhaps the audience.
The question is that Al-Haq has both macro and micro dimensions. This has to be recognized. But the Zionists also know this. And they dismantle and kill any leader. How can we ensure that our leaders are sincere to the Quran? Simple. When Imam al-Mahdi emerges in Mecca and declares himself to be Imam al-Mahdi, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ said that the Abdal from Syria and Iraq will come to give him bay'ah. Who are the Abdal? The Sufis have hijacked the term. Too bad to say it. They have hijacked the word Abdal and given to it another meaning. The Abdal are people who wage the struggle on the battlefield. And as soon as one dies, another one takes his place. And this one dies, another one takes his place. And this one dies, another one takes his place. And there is an endless line of people waiting to come and take the place. These are the Abdal. Over there, they fight to get a US green card. And they don't want to die because then they lose their green card. The US Armed Forces have to go fishing for people to buy them, to put them to fight. And on our side, when one falls, another one takes his place. These are the Abdal. And when you have a leader in Akhir Zaman who stands up to proclaim the truth, he will say to them, you can kill a man, but you cannot kill the truth. And when you speak like that, and you inspire the people, then every time they kill one, 1,000 will come to take his place.
Thank you. We have one more question, and then perhaps we have the last one over here.
What's next, Sheikh? Assalamu alaikum.
This face is familiar.
Yes.
Yes.
We met at Alamin.
That's right.
Maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So, what is next prior the advent of Imam Mahdi? We know it's godless,
Yeah.
and we also recognize the powers that is with us in Malaysia and many parts of the world are all towards Washington and the United Nations. So, in between the advent of Imam Mahdi and now, what's next for us?
I'm
We
happy.
recognize it's all.
Yes. I'm happy that you asked this question. It gives me a chance to expand. When the Malhama takes place, the result of the Malhama would be that Russia will emerge with an upper hand. Russia will emerge with an upper hand. Why? Because the event which is to follow the Malhama is the conquest of Constantinople. The conquest of Constantinople has one and only one military significance, which is also political. And that is that Constantinople stands on the bank of the Bosphorus. The Bosphorus is the waterway which links the Black Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. And in the Black Sea there is only one power, only one, which can use the Bosphorus to project power, and that's Russia. Only Russia. Nobody else but Russia. If the conquest of Constantinople takes place after the Bosphorus, the one and only implication is that NATO is going to lose control of Constantinople. NATO cannot lose control of Constantinople unless and until there is civil war in Turkey. That civil war, when it does take place, must attract the forces of Islam around the world. All those who are in opposition to the oppressor, and everybody knows who's the oppressor. All the forces in the world of Islam that are in opposition to oppression and to the oppressor must join that battle as soon as the great war takes place. That is the starting point. To make your way by whatever means you can to join the battle to liberate Constantinople. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, listen to his words. لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ, you will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ. He praised the commander and he praised the army which will conquer Constantinople. So my first comment is that civil war has to take place in Turkey, with one side opposed to NATO and that side attracting the support of all the Muslims. The false flag coup that just occurred in Turkey recently was meant to consolidate NATO's position in Turkey. Consolidate NATO to make Turkey a more reliable partner in the war against Russia. When the civil war is to take place, we cannot conquer Constantinople unless it's on the basis of a Muslim-Christian alliance. Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal, which is the surah of military alliances and international affairs, He says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ الْكَافِرُونَ بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ, that the kuffar make alliances amongst themselves. إِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you Muslims do not do the same, look to see with whom you can make an alliance. إِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. If you do not make alliances with like-minded people, there will be fitna and great fasad in the world. Okay? With whom can we make an alliance? With the Christians who are closest in love and affection for us. That's the answer. And the Russians, the Orthodox Christians of Russia and the Eastern Christian world are our natural allies. So I see two things. I see civil war in Turkey, with Muslims around the world defying their governments and marching to Constantinople to join our army. And number two, I see a military alliance with Orthodox Christianity, therefore with Russia, which will lead to the conquest of Constantinople.
We have one more question over here.
Right, sir.
I wanted to ask that we have heard on the TV channels and all these newspapers and everything, a prophecy regarding Ghazwa Hind. I understand that the hadith is zaif, it's not mustanid. So is there something like this, that the war is to be fought between Pakistan and India, which is what everybody talking about right now? And what's the truth behind it?
I regret I can't comment. I would like to comment on this subject on another occasion in order not to divert attention from our special topic for today. Yeah? So I will not speak on this topic today. No. Sorry.
I think that if we don't have... we have one. So this will be our last question.
What's happened to the world? If the third schedule is going to control, what's happened to the money?
If what?
The third schedule, I mean the Israel.
Yeah, if Israel is going to control, what's going to happen to our money? Okay. What will happen to the world of money? when Israel takes control? That's the question. I just delivered 3 lectures on money. You'll find them on my YouTube channel. They were delivered at a Sorao here in KL. The first was entitled, What is Money in the Quran and Sunnah? The second, What is Money in the World Today? And the third was Beyond the Petrodollar. What is the Islamic response to the bogus monetary system? All 3 lectures were just delivered recently, and please listen to them. What we have is a balloon which is deliberately being filled with more and more money, invisible, intangible money, in order that it will one day burst. They want the system to collapse. They want the system to collapse. They don't know when it will collapse, but the balloon will have to burst. When the balloon is not expanding fast enough, they pump into it something called, what is it called? What? Quantitative easing, QE. Where do they get these terms from? I don't know. Arab money, fiat money, calling their children kids. I don't know where they get these terms from. QE. That is that the President of the United States of America sends a letter to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve then issues a check for $7 trillion to the banking system. In order that the banks don't collapse, they tell monstrous lies. The purpose is to expand the balloon so that one day the balloon will collapse, will burst. When the balloon bursts and the US dollar collapses, no money can survive. None. Because the entire system is built on the US dollar. Brexit occurred to tell Europe that the euro also will not survive. That's the message of Brexit. So the Malaysian ringgit will, goodbye to the Malaysian ringgit. And the Pakistanis will joyfully say goodbye to that piece of paper called the Pakistani rupee, which is the instrument of their poverty. And then after the paper money goes, which is the money? It's going to be electronic or digital money. In my last lecture, I said, I didn't know. In a post-nuclear world, how can you have electronic money? Because nothing electronic will work. Then someone came to visit me from Saudi Arabia, and he explained to me. He said, Sheikh, let me explain to you. He says the internet is based not only on the wireless internet, but also cable internet. And he said cable internet will survive the nuclear war. And with the cable internet, the banking system can survive. And so invisible, intangible, digital money will replace paper money. And there'll be only one currency in the world. Only one. So goodbye to the money changer. One currency in the world, and it's going to be invisible, intangible. You can't see it. It has no intrinsic value at all. It is created out of nothing. You just type it in and type it out. I have to restrain my language because I'm burning inside with fire. Allah uses the term in the Quran, donkeys. He said they have the Torah and they don't live in accordance to the Torah. They're just like donkeys with a load of books in their backs. Another word for donkey is an ass. In the Caribbean, from where I come, we call it a jackass. Same word. So when this invisible, intangible, digital money comes for all of mankind using one money, the jackasses in the world of Islam will give their fatwa that even this is halal. Tell me what else is there for us to do. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَهُ أَسْفَلَ السَّافِلِينَ. When will you go and ask your scholars? Go and ask them. Pick up the phone and call them. Ask them, is this money that we are using today halal? We don't find it in the Quran, we don't find it in the Sunnah. Where did it come from? If it's halal, tell us so. If it's haram, tell us so. And this is not a private conversation, we want to coach you. And tell us what's going to be our position when the invisible money comes, the digital money. One currency for all of mankind. But Israel cannot claim to be holy Israel. Khalifa state, Khilafah state, using bogus money. Nobody, no Jew will accept Dajjal as the Masih. And so Israel will have to return to dinar and dirham. Yes. And a dinar and dirham monetary system will have to come back to the world. And I pray that I'm not alive. I beg Allah to take me away, take me away, take me away. I don't want to live to see that day of shame and disgrace. That they bring back the dinar and dirham while we are content to eat biryani and go home and sleep.
Yeah, no more questions.
Last question.
Coming back to this monetary system, like we are living in this world and you're born in the paper money. So what can we do? We are buying things with paper money. Everybody is buying with ringgit and dollars and everything.
I'm glad you asked the question. Number one, the first step is Allah did not send down the Quran to donkeys. Allah says that He sent down this Quran لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. He sent down this Quran to a people who think. So stop whatever you're doing and use the intellect that Allah gave to you. And make an effort to study using the Quran. I've delivered the lectures, I've done all the homework for you. So you yourself can come to the conclusion that this is bogus, it's fraudulent, it's haram, it is a vehicle of exploitation and oppression and enslavement. That's the first step. You can't move anywhere without that first step. When you come to that conclusion, the second step is to go to the scholars and get from the scholars their response and publish it. Because they're scared. They are stuck in the system. They don't know what to do. They can't say I'm wrong, but they also cannot say I'm right. That's not a scholar.
How do you survive it?
No, we haven't come to that as yet. We're going step by step, step by step. If you cannot get the scholars of Islam to wake up, your job is going to be impossibly difficult. When you can get some scholars of Islam to wake up, prominent scholars, you then go to the next stage. The next stage is to launch a movement which is peaceful movement. A movement to mobilize the people. That we want the Quran and the Sunnah to prevail. We want the money which is in the Quran and Sunnah, dinar and dirham, to be made legal tender. We're not saying to take the Pakistani rupee out of the market. No, we're not that stupid. We are saying make dinar and dirham legal tender alongside the rupee, so that those who want to use dinar and dirham can do it. Okay? The reason why the enemy does not want that is because once you have gold as money, their system will collapse. When you are launching that movement to bring dinar and dirham as legal tender, the The word will reach Moscow. The word will reach Beijing. And if Russia and China decide to make their money redeemable in gold, the whole system will collapse. That's it. So don't think about yourself alone first. Think big. Think about the system. The micro response, of course, is you don't have much time left. You should already have had some dirhams in your pocket. At least maybe 100, 200 dirhams in your pocket. And you should have a few dinars in your pocket. If you do not have it as yet, go and do it quickly. A dirham is selling now for about maybe 16 ringgits for a dirham. So 100 dirhams is only 1600 ringgits. Go and get 100 dirhams. Keep it at home. A dinar is selling now for maybe about 800 ringgits, okay? Get a few dinars and keep them, because once the paper money collapses, you are at their mercy with that electronic monetary system. You cannot take your money out of the bank. No. In fact, it's not banks. I don't think the banks will control money anymore. I think it's central banks that are going to take over from banks. And central banks are going to control all the money. Every account will be in the central bank, and they will control the central banks of the world. Okay? So that's a micro response. We had Eid al-Adha recently. I bought my animal, Qurbani, using dinar and dirham. Yeah. Because I said, if I buy it with bogus paper money, will Allah accept it? Huh? You can use your dinar and dirham to the extent that it's possible to use it, but at least keep dinar and dirham in storage for that rainy day.
I think we're getting close to the end of the session. So we'll have just one last question from here, because we already had one question here. So our brother here, last question, and then
That's one more question, then we finish, okay?
My name is Akhtar Qureshi, belong to the Pakistan. My question is, you are saying that all the money is bogus money and the paper money. Nowadays, we are using dinar and dirham. If we are using dinar and dirham, it's also paper money.
Oh, okay.
Dinar and dirham in the shape of paper or in the shape of...
Okay. I should have mentioned
Please.
that when the word dinar is used in the Quran,
Yes.
when Allah used the word dinar in the Quran, He's referring to a gold coin,
Yeah.
not a paper dinar.
Yeah.
Huh? And when He used the word dirham in the Quran, He's referring to a silver coin. Yeah.